The next question is, can the world really abandon relations with China, considering the vast trade dependency? If not, what would be China's political position in the world in days to come?
What will be China's position in the world?
Yes.
Well, there's a lot of talk about China becoming the next hegemonic power. It's very misleading. China has had enormous progress and economic progress in recent years. The poverty has been radically reduced. There are many more educational opportunities. Scientific institutions are developing. In some areas, China's in the lead in the world. Sustainable energy, for example, solar power, windmills, electrification. China's way ahead. And there is a lot of talk about, has been for years, about American decline, power shifting to Asia, to China and India. Very unlikely. China remains a poor country. If you take a look at the United Nations Human Development Index, which measures various aspects of a country's welfare, China's about 90th, I think. India's maybe 130th. These are poor countries with very serious problems. That's a pretty recent development, incidentally. You go back to the 18th century, China and India were the centers of economic power and social advancement. They were subject to imperial conquest, which devastated them. They're now sort of coming back, but they have a long way to go. You take a look at one of the measures of standard measures of power in the world is gross domestic product, how much is produced in the country. It's a very misleading measure. In these days of neoliberal globalization, that measure doesn't mean much. A much more reasonable measure is how much of world wealth is owned by multinational corporations in a particular country. So how much of world wealth is owned by corporations based in the United States? The answer to that is spectacular. 50%. 50% of world wealth is owned by US-based multinationals. In almost every category, they are first, sometimes second. Retail, industry, agriculture, commerce. They're first almost everywhere. Take, say, China. China is the source of production for most of the world. If you have an iPhone, it was put together in China. China gets almost nothing from that, barely gets any of the profit. Much of the profit goes to Taiwan because the Taiwanese companies like Foxconn are organizing production for Apple Corporation in China. The vast majority of the profit comes to the United States, to the Apple Corporation, which has the design, the development, the management, and so on. So China gets something. Taiwan gets more. The United States gets most of it. And that's what you find in industry after industry. That aside, China has, and India also have very severe problems that the West doesn't have. Demographic problems, ecological problems, lack of agricultural resources, very serious problems. So I think China is surely going to be a major power in the world, but it's not going to be dominant.